All right, so welcome to another deep dive, everybody. And today we are headed straight back to the year 1987 Chicago for a truly bizarre event. You ready for this one?
Oh, absolutely. This one is right up my alley.
It's the Max Headroom incident. Now, picture this, right? You're settled in for a nice night of television, maybe catching a game on WGN Channel 9, and all of a sudden, bam, the broadcast cuts to static.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just a regular technical glitch, was it?
Not at all. No, this was a full-on deliberate hijacking, a real intrusion into the television broadcast system.
Right. It happened during a sports segment, right, with
Yeah.
Dan Rowan. The screen goes black, and then suddenly viewers are greeted by, well, I mean, have you ever seen anything quite like it?
Oh, it was unsettling. Yeah, definitely unsettling. There's this masked figure, and he's wearing this Max Headroom mask and sunglasses, and he just appears swaying back and forth against what looks like a corrugated metal wall. And the audio, oh man, the audio is distorted, buzzy, almost like a robotic sound, you know? And the figure's just making these strange movements.
I mean, it's no wonder. I mean, this is primetime television, right? People were freaked out.
Yeah.
Imagine seeing this on live TV back then.
Right.
This is 1987. No internet to check if anyone else is seeing it. You can't just rewind to make sure you weren't hallucinating.
Oh, absolutely. This was like the pre-viral video era, you know, there's no instant communication. So for the people who saw this live, it was just this isolated, inexplicable event that, well, it just kind of left this lasting impression. It had to, right?
Okay, so walk us through that first hijacking on WGN. What exactly did viewers see and hear?
Okay, so the whole thing, the hijack broadcast, it only lasted for about 30 seconds. The masked figure, he seems to be mimicking Max Headroom. You know, Max Headroom, he was a popular computer-generated TV host back then. The audio was garbled, very hard to understand, like what's actually being said. But you can hear these bizarre phrases and sounds mixed in.
Okay, and this is all happening while the technicians at WGN are frantically trying to regain control of their signal, right?
Right.
Like, I just can't imagine the chaos in that control room.
Oh, I bet it was a madhouse in there. And, you know, when they finally managed to cut back to the studio, poor Dan Roan, right? The sportscaster, he does his best to try and maintain his composure, but oh man, you can just tell he's shaken, like visibly shaken. I mean, who wouldn't be?
Right. To have your broadcast suddenly, like, totally interrupted by this masked figure spouting these distorted messages, I mean, that's got to be a jarring experience, to say the least.
Yeah.
But believe it or not, a couple hours later, things got even weirder.
Oh yeah, that's when the hacker strikes again. This time, targeting PBS, Channel 11.
PBS.
Yeah, they interrupted a broadcast of, wait for it, Doctor Who, of all things. Which, I mean, when you think about it, adds this whole other layer of strangeness, you know? It's Doctor Who.
I mean, Doctor Who being interrupted by a distorted figure in a Max Headroom mask, yeah, that's like two different dimensions of weirdness colliding. But this second hijacking, this one was different, right?
Yes, definitely. The PBS engineers, see, they were gone for the day, so the entire hijack broadcast, it just played out totally uninterrupted for about 90 seconds this time. So we get the full performance, as it were.
The full performance. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Now I got to know. What exactly went down during this second longer intrusion?
So picture it, more of those same unsettling visuals, right?
Yeah.
The masked figure, that corrugated metal background, all the bizarre movements. But this time, oh, there's a lot more vocalization.
Oh.
A lot more. Although, yeah, it's still heavily distorted.
Okay. What kind of things is this figure saying?
All right, so it's this mix of these just jumbled phrases and slogans, right? At one point, he cries out, "I just made a giant masterpiece for all the greatest world newspaper nerds."
World newspaper nerds.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because WGN, the call sign, it actually stood for World's Greatest Newspaper at the time.
Whoa, okay. So maybe it was a subtle dig at the media establishment.
Yeah.
Like they were mocking the very institution that they were hijacking.
Yeah. It's definitely a possibility. And then there's this part, he starts humming the Clutch Cargo theme song.
Clutch Cargo.
Yeah, it was this 1960s cartoon, you know, and it was known for its animation. They would superimpose real human mouths onto these animated characters.
Oh, okay. Like this creepy mouse from like the Conan O'Brien skits.
Exactly like that.
Okay, so was this just like a totally random, nonsensical thing thrown in for extra weirdness? Or could there be something more to it? Could there be like a deeper meaning, a hidden message? Maybe in the choice of that theme song.
Well, that is one of the many questions surrounding this incident. But before we get too deep into the possible interpretations, I think it's important to kind of take a step back. We should talk about the real Max Headroom, for those who might not be familiar with the actual character.
Yeah, good point. Not everyone might be up on their 80s cyberpunk TV hosts.
Right. So the real Max Headroom was this computer-generated character created in the mid-'80s, and he was known for his witty remarks and his satirical take on the news. He would often poke fun at the media, corporate culture, things like that.
And he was played by a real actor, though, right?
Yeah.
Like with the prosthetics and everything. Matt Frewer.
Exactly. They used makeup and all these special effects to kind of create that, digital, slightly glitchy look. And he became a pop culture icon. He even had his own show for a while.
Which I mean, makes the hacker's choice all the more, well, interesting. It's like they were deliberately playing with these themes of media manipulation and control, the themes that were already kind of embedded in that Max Headroom character.
Yeah, exactly. It really makes you think. Was the hacker trying to make some kind of statement about the power of media? About how easily our perceptions can be manipulated? Or was it all, in the end, just an elaborate, albeit unsettling, prank?
Right. It's like the incident itself becomes this commentary on the very themes that the real Max Headroom character embodied.
Oh, totally. It adds another layer to the whole mystery.
Okay, so we've got these bizarre hijackings, this creepy masked figure mimicking this pop culture icon, and we got a whole lot of unanswered questions. So where do we even begin to unpack all of this?
I think one of the first things we have to look at is the motive. Like, what was the point of all of this? What was this, a prank? Was it a statement? Something else entirely?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? The mystery of the motive, it's a huge part of why people are still so fascinated with this incident. I mean, even after all these years. And I think, the fact that the case is still unsolved just adds to that intrigue.
Oh, absolutely. The FCC, the FBI, they investigated, but they never identified the people responsible. So, I mean, all we can do is speculate, weigh the evidence, come up with our own theories, try to figure it out.
So let's do that. Let's dive into some of those theories. One of the most popular, I think, is that it was a disgruntled employee, someone who worked at WGN, had a grudge maybe, wanted to disrupt the broadcast, cause some chaos.
Oh yeah, that's a common theory for sure, and it makes sense, right? Someone on the inside, someone who's familiar with how things work at the station, they would have the knowledge, they would have the access to be able to pull something like this off. Think about it; they would know about the technical vulnerabilities, and they would know how to exploit them.
But wouldn't there have been security measures in place back then? I don't know, like cameras or logs or something they could point to, an inside job.
Well, yeah, you would think so. But remember, this is 1987.
Right.
Security systems, I mean, they weren't nearly as sophisticated back then. And even if there were logs or recordings, it's possible they were, I don't know, tampered with, erased.
True. Yeah, this is pre-digital security cameras, pre-extensive cybersecurity, protocols. Yeah, so it's totally possible that a determined individual could have just slipped through the cracks.
And that leads us to, well, another theory. Maybe it wasn't just one person. Maybe it was a group of people, like a collective of some kind, maybe tech enthusiasts or just hobbyists.
Sort of like an early version of a hacker collective, they're testing their skills.
Yeah.
Pushing the boundaries of what's possible with technology.
Exactly. Yeah. And think about it. The personal computer, it was becoming more accessible at the time.
Yeah.
And then you had dial-up bulletin boards starting to pop up.
Right.
They were like these hubs for techies to connect, to share information. So, it's totally conceivable that a group with the right knowledge, the right resources could have put something like this together.
Okay, so we've got disgruntled employee, we've got hacker collective. What are some of the other explanations that people have thrown out there over the years?
Well, some people they believe that it was politically motivated, that it was a statement. Maybe against the media establishment or corporate control. Remember the real Max Headroom character. I mean, he often satirized these very themes. So maybe the hacker was trying to use the character, as a way to express their own their own discontent.
Yeah, it's like they were trying to hijack the airwaves, to deliver this subversive message, even if it was like a cryptic and unsettling one. But I mean, there's no clear claim of responsibility, right? No manifesto or anything like that to decipher. So we're left to interpret the meaning through those distorted phrases, those bizarre visual.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's where it gets really interesting. I mean, the Max Headroom incident, it almost becomes like a Rorschach test. People they project their own interpretations onto this blank canvas of the unknown.
It's almost like a piece of performance art. Like it's open to multiple interpretations, and it was designed to provoke a reaction. But before we get to into the semiotics of it all, I think it's important to address the technical side of things, right? Like, how did they actually pull this off?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it really speaks to the ingenuity of whoever did this. They likely exploited a vulnerability in the broadcast system, specifically the studio transmitter link, the STL.
Okay, so for those of us who aren't broadcast engineers, can you break down how the STL works and maybe how the hacker might have used it to their advantage?
Sure. Okay, so back in '87, television signals, right? They traveled from the studio to the transmitter, which was on a high power antenna, and it went through this STL. Think of it like a pipeline. It's carrying the show, from point A to point B.
So the hacker basically they tapped into that pipeline. They intercepted the signal before it could reach the transmitter.
Exactly. That's it. And that's where the real technical skill comes in. I mean, they would have needed specialized equipment, a deep understanding of how the STL system worked. I mean, to be able to pull this off.
And what about that voice, that distorted voice? How did they create that?
It was so creepy, so robotic.
Yeah. So they probably used a device called a ring modulator, and it's basically this electronic circuit, right?
Right.
And what it does is it alters the frequency of an audio signal, so you get that robotic or metallic sound, that signature effect.
Hold on a second. Ring modulator. Didn't they use something like that to create the voice of the Daleks in Doctor Who? And wasn't the second hijacking during a Doctor Who broadcast? Yeah, it was. Yes, it's an interesting connection, isn't it? Maybe the hacker was a fan of the show. Maybe they chose that particular broadcast for the second intrusion, or maybe they were playing with this idea of iconic distorted voices, from science fiction.
No, I love the Doctor Who connection. It adds this whole other layer of pop culture intrigue, I think, to this whole story. But getting back to the ring modulator, I mean, was that kind of technology, was it readily available back then?
Surprisingly, yes, it was. Ring modulators, I mean, they weren't some obscure, expensive piece of equipment. You could buy one at a music store. Yeah. So, I mean, the tools to create this kind of disruption were pretty accessible, even back then.
It's amazing to think, something that seems so sophisticated, so technologically complex, could actually be achieved with relatively simple means.
I know, right? It just goes to show the resourcefulness of the hacker, their ability to just take this readily available technology and use it to create this huge, this impactful, this memorable event.
And speaking of impactful events, there was another broadcast hijacking, right?
Right.
That happened a year before the Max Headroom incident, the Captain Midnight incident.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On HBO. What can we learn from that case?
Oh yeah, Captain Midnight. That's an interesting one to compare and contrast with the Max Headroom incident. So in April of 1986, there was this the satellite dish operator. His name was John R. McDougall, and he was frustrated with HBO's rising subscription fees. And he decided to take matters into his own hands.
And what a statement it was. He actually managed to override HBO's signal during a broadcast of The Falcon and the Snowman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. And he replaced the movie. He replaced the movie with his own message, protesting the pricing practices. It said, "Good evening, HBO, from Captain Midnight, $12.95 a month. No way. Showtime Movie Channel, beware."
He even signed off with his contact information. Talk about bold.
It's like he was just driven by this sense of righteous indignation. He saw what HBO was doing. He saw it as unfair, and he was determined to make his voice heard. Consequences be damned.
Yeah, and were there
Yeah,
consequences?
well, FBI they caught up with him eventually, and he was fined $5,000, put on probation. But it's interesting. McDougal, he's never expressed regret for what he did. I mean, he's actually become a bit of a folk hero, I think, in some circles,
Right.
kind of a symbol of resistance against against corporate greed.
It's just amazing, right? How two seemingly similar, acts of broadcast intrusion, they can have such different motives, such different outcomes. One was this protest against rising fees. The other is still shrouded in mystery.
Yeah. It just highlights all the different possibilities when it comes to these kinds of incidents. Sometimes the motive is it's clear, sometimes it's not. Sometimes the perpetrator is caught, sometimes they get away with it.
So where does that leave us, right? With the Max Headroom incident. I mean, we've gone through the theories, we've looked at the technical details, the historical context, but the main question remains: who was behind the mask, and what did it all mean?
I mean, that's the real question, isn't it? That's the million-dollar question. And I think that's part of what makes this case, this incident so fascinating, so enduring. I mean, it's a mystery that just refuses to be solved. It's like a puzzle with missing pieces.
Yeah, we're left to grapple with that ambiguity. We have to try to fill in those blanks with our own interpretations, our own theories.
Exactly. And in a way that makes it, I think, even more relevant today. I mean, we live in this world where information is constantly being manipulated, right? It's like these lines between reality and fabrication, they're getting blurrier and blurrier all the time.
It's like the Max Headroom incident. It was almost like a precursor to this age of deepfakes and misinformation.
Yeah, there's definitely an argument to be made there. I mean, back in '87, the idea of someone, hijacking a TV signal, it seemed like, I don't know, it seemed like something out of science fiction. And now it almost feels quaint compared to the sophisticated ways in which, digital media can be manipulated.
Yeah, it's a little unsettling when you really think about it. What once required, you know, specialized equipment, specialized knowledge, can now be done with a few clicks on a smartphone. Anyone with the right software can just create these fake videos, these audio recordings, and they can be very convincing.
And that raises some pretty big questions, doesn't it, about the nature of truth, authenticity, in this digital age. I mean, how do we know what to believe when anything can be faked?
Yeah.
How do we separate fact from fiction when the tools of manipulation are just, they're so readily available?
That's a challenge we all face now.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think the Max Headroom incident in its own strange way kind of foreshadowed all of this.
Yeah, it was like a wake-up call, a reminder that the media we consume, it's not always this neutral reflection of reality, It can be manipulated, it can be distorted, it can be used to shape our perceptions.
And that's why it's so important to be media literate, right? To be critical consumers of information. We have to question our sources. We have to consider different perspectives. We have to be aware of the potential for bias and manipulation.
Absolutely. The Max Headroom incident, I mean, it might not have given us any easy answers, but it definitely raised some really important questions about the power of media, about the nature of truth, about the importance of critical thinking. It's a story that I think continues to resonate even decades later, because it speaks to our anxieties about technology, about information control, about this erosion of trust in a world where anything can be faked.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to leave it for today. So for all of you deep divers out there, here's something to think about. What do you think was behind this bizarre act? Was it a prank? Was it some kind of social commentary? A test of technology? Was it something else entirely? Let us know your thoughts, your theories in the comments below. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive into who knows what. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.